And now we're joined by Brooke Salazar, joining for the Port Commission position 4. So go ahead with the 2-minute introduction.
So first, a little background about myself. I was born and raised in Sunnyside, Washington. I was raised by my grandparents due to my mother's drug problem. From there, I went ahead and went on to school, and I got my education at Eastern Washington University. I studied pre-law government. From there, moved to the lovely Seattle, followed my cousin, where I did odd jobs. Now I've worked for the state of Washington, and I do workers' compensation law for them. I'm also the youngest executive board member of the Washington Federation of Public Employees Union, and also the youngest executive board member of the King County Labor Council, representing the 150,000 unionized workers of King County. A little more background information about me is I'm also on the 34th Democrats executive board, and I might be the youngest member there too, and I am the chair of the PCOs. PCOs, all of them, which is very, very, very challenging. So now a lot of people want to know why I'm running for Port Commissioner, and the big issue is, I sit every month. I sit in 2 meetings that can last from an hour to 2 hours, and every month it's about the port, the horrible things they're doing to workers, and basically the semi-corruption that's going on there. I mean, every political director I've been talking to from unions, when I'm going out for their endorsement, is they're just like, I'm done with the port. It needs to change. It's just a horrible place, and I want to change that. And one of the things about me is I make no money off the port. I do not get a dime from port money whatsoever. Some of my challengers, they work on the port. They have contracts with the port. I have zero. I have no allegiance. My allegiance would be to basically the taxpayers. And I want the port to start working for us. Right now we have a CEO, and you know what? I've never received a dividend from this port. It has a CEO who's just throwing her money away and also just doing some nasty things to workers.
Great, thank you. So now we have our 4 prepared questions that we're asking all candidates for Port, and they're actually right in front of you if you want to turn it over and read along with us.
Okay.
And I believe we left off, Jason, will you do number 1? Those are 2-minute answers.
What is your plan to keep the Port of Seattle competitive when other ports offer similar services at a lower cost?
I'm going to take a guess you're talking about the harbor, but if you're talking about both of them, as the airport. Now the harbor, we have a Seaport Alliance where we work and we stop underbidding each other with the Port of Tacoma, and so that's great because we're no longer working against each other. But to be competitive, we do need to change the way we do business down on the harbor. We have semis lined up all the way to Georgetown every morning waiting to move the freight from our port to the railroad crossing 2 blocks away. And one of the things I would like to do is for us to start using the electric mules that are built by Kenworth. They're unionized and they're built here in King County. That'd be really great for us to do. But on top of that, we need to get T5 up and running. Now there's a railway that's right there, which we don't implement or we don't use at all. So we need to go ahead and make that advance and use the latest technology to make that more, appealing to importers and exporters. As for the airport, we need to go ahead and start the long-term plan. We need the 4th runway. We have planes backed up around the corner in it. That's why, when you're waiting to fly, you're waiting about an hour for the plane to actually take off as you're hitting the runway. So that's a long process, and we've already started down with the coalition, and we're working with the city of Urion and possibly working with them to see if they can get if we can work to move a 4th runway down that way. So that would be the work that I'd be definitely trying to work with. But those are the things that we have to do to lower our costs, and also possibly even to tie our local economy to the planes. Maybe even doing cheaper landing fares for planes that are built here locally. That would be, an incentive for airlines to be purchasing the planes built here instead of in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Great. Brittany, number 2.
What is your position on the leasing of port facilities to oil drilling operations?
First of all, it was a shame that we had a big oil rig parked outside our landscape. My union did not support that. The King County Labor Council did, since we represent the 38 workers that did do the work there. And so what I had to do, and that was ask people not to take a stance in the King County Labor Council, but go back to their unions and do things. Like my union, you know, we were against it, so we went ahead and we paid for memberships for up to 20 members to go out there and take canoes, and we paid for those because we did not like, you know, an oil rig in our beautiful landscape. I mean, that's just horrible. But fossil fuels are part of our economy. But right now, I don't believe that we should be having oil rigs and doing the work here, especially when they're going to be heading off to damage the pristine forest up there in Alaska in our reserves. So that's one of the main things. I know Foss Maritime, they had, you know, a big plan to build insulators. I think they were going to put a factory right there on the T5, but they took that down after they saw what we did. So we lost that factory, and it was going to be I think $50 million project. But since they saw the protest and all that, we lost that. So if the Port Commissioners would have had the hindsight, knowing that Seattle would not allow an oil rig to be parked outside, we probably would have had a $50 million insulator project being done right now. But instead of, you know, we lost money on that project. We had to pay overtime for all the police officers. We put police officers in harm's way, and we had, you know, just chaos down there for a week, and that was just horrible. I mean, and that's just common sense. You know, we got to know our public, and we have to respect their wishes, and they should have stepped in and just stopped it before it happened.
Great. Ben, number 3.
What changes or reforms do you support for the Port Commission itself?
Port Commission, well, first of all, I would love to see us in the district races. I truly believe everybody who gets taxed should have a voice at that commission. And so a lot of people are in disagreement about that because it makes conflicts with the Port of Tacoma. But, you know, we need to take care and we need to make sure our public has the voice, and everybody, you know, who gets taxed has a say. Strong support of that. I would love to see term limits on Port Commissioners. You know what? It's not fair for some guy. It erodes the trust when you have somebody there for so long. And I would love to see, you know, just term limits. Gets new blood, get new ideas, and it basically will stop the insider consulting fees, as you will see the port, you know, continually does. So that's a major thing that I would want to see. I also believe that the Port Commission needs to have its own staff. The CEO currently controls the staff member that does all the reporting for the Port Commission. So it's basically the commission, due to its part-time ability, it's just rubber stamping what the CEO does. But you know, the time they spent on, you know, in those meetings, it's how do you say it? It's not productive. They don't have enough time to talk to constituencies and actually, you know, get the knowledge of the policies that are being pushed forward in front of them to rubber stamp. The Port Commissioners need to have their own staff. That way they can be in contact with their voters, and also so the policies can be made, you know, while they're not unable to work on the policies, the staff can go ahead and get those policies ready for them to vote on during the open sessions in front of everybody. So those are some major reforms that I would like to see done. And I would also like to see the port staying out of the city of Seattle business when it comes to, like, for instance, the stadium and those things. Because now they're putting the taxpayers at risk for the key arena, which I'm not in favor of. I like to see the, you know, DeSoto go ahead and move forward.
Great. Ben, number 4.
So, do you believe we've achieved full transparency in the port's contracting and compensation practices? And where do you see possibilities for further improvement?
When it comes to contracting and compensation practices, no, I mean, the port wouldn't have been in the Seattle Times for, you know, giving $46 million away, especially to, you know, non-unionized workers. You know, we would have to go ahead and rechange that, and that would take policy, and that would also have to remove the ability for the Port Commissioners to actually see the work that the port's doing. You know, having to have 2 signatures to go see the policies and the paperwork. You know, for one Port Commissioner to do the homework and due diligence to know what he is going to be voting on, that needs to change. So we have not achieved that transparency whatsoever, especially when it comes to contracting. And the practice for further improvement. So I think the Port Commission, like I said, needs its own staff. That's going to really change the way it does business. A staff that's only, you know, beholden to the Port Commission and not to the CEO, because they can go ahead and be the eyes and ears of the Port Commissioner who are part-time and not there every day. which would be really great. And then the port commissioners need to actually take more responsibility. They are the commission. They can go ahead and hire and fire people, and should be changing like the term CEO, because I believe there should be no CEO in any public agency, maybe a director, but a CEO is just, we have CEO as a president, and it's just not working out. And so when it comes to the contracting, we really do need the reform. I would like to see is full bids. I would like to see worker protections, especially when it comes to the leasing of agencies. Like for instance, we just leased a bunch of airport locations, and those were leased to companies that have still owe workers $2 million in back wages, and we allowed that to go ahead and process through, especially after the $15 minimum wage. And I am out of time.
All right, so now we'll open up to follow-up questions. People can ask whatever they want. And we have 1 minute answers to these. Liz and then David and then Ben and then Jason.
So should be a pretty quick one. I just am wondering if there is a port commissioner, current or past, who you feel you have a particular affinity for, due to their perspective and also efficacy.
I can't answer that question honestly. The King County Labor Council, there's been some issue with each one of them. I've had current ones. When the $15 minimum wage was going on at CTAC, they were coming in here asking for endorsements and saying we're going to get you $12.50, and I'm like, but the people have already said $15 minimum wage. Why are you trying to work against the voters? And that's a big deal. I mean, like every one of them has some issues, and so actually, no, I would like to be my own, kind of trailblazer. Because honestly, I really wanted to just make those decisions, and then hopefully change the port and not have to rerun. And it's in a better place than I left it.
David?
You said port commissioners should have staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so 5 port commissioners, 5 staffers, wages, benefits, $500,000 easy. Where does the money come from?
Well, I would say that we have a very wealthy CEO, and I think he probably is a little overcompensated since he is one of the highest compensated public officials in the state. I would definitely try to bring that back down to standard wages that correlate with what he's doing. But the port has been giving away money left and right. So you gotta think about it. The port just spent $450,000 on stop being the soda arena. That's $450 taxpayer dollars to get us to go for the Key Arena, which would cost us $250 million of taxpayer city money, and also put a Key Arena right up, a big venue right outside the Mercer Mess, which would cause more traffic and delays. And so therefore, that's right there is half the cost of that staff. So if you think about it, and with the port making, the port gets 1.9% of all taxes for. Sorry.
Finish your sentence.
For taxes from housing, they need to just use their money more responsibly.
Great. Ben and then Jason.
So one of our earlier questions, your concern about oil drilling seemed to be more about how the rig looked rather than its effect on the environment. Do you consider yourself an environmentalist? And as a port commissioner, would you advocate to protect the environment and limit the use and transportation of fossil fuels?
Now, the look was bad. The oil rig wasn't drilling here, so I'm going to be, and one of the things I will say is the workers working on those rigs, in part of their contract, they actually can stop the functioning of those oil rigs. So I'd rather have our workers working on those oil rigs than the workers coming from Baja, Mexico, who will just let oil spill and not say anything and not stop the drilling. But I also know that I'm not going to be a realist. We have refineries here, and I don't want those to close either. But I do want us to be more responsible when it comes to fossil fuels. That's why I want to go ahead and stop those trucks from, that are just sitting there idling all the way from the port to Georgetown every morning, just releasing those diesel fuels. I want those to be electric mules that are built here and that are clean energy. We're just not away from oil yet. You know, if everybody had to pay $5 a gallon of gas, you know, people would be upset. So that's just not realistic. But I would love for us to be hauling other things other than oil. But I don't know how to stop that. But I would try to, and try to change the values of the port so it's more environmentally friendly.
Okay, Jason?
Could you describe some of the intermodal infrastructure that is needed for the port?
Well, the port, there's been lots of ideas passed out. I would love to see a dedicated lane that would really help the semis get in and out. Like I said, I would prefer to have the port be paying for the electric mules and then have the workers do those instead of contracting that out to third-party contractors who sometimes, usually, and most of the time, are taking advantage of immigrant workers. I'd love to bring that back in-house. That way, we're not, you know, creating the platform for our workers to be exploited. And also, like I said, you know, the planes, we need a fourth runway. It's coming. We need to do it, especially with you know, the boom that's coming in this, you know, in this town. We have people flying in and out. You know, just thinking of like my wife's work. They fly, you know, people in for interviews constantly. Every day, there's like 50 to 60 people coming in for interviews. And you know, we are a booming town, and we're going to need a better airport. And you know, a lot of people right now. The big thing is when it came to the flights, because currently the port's stealing money from the taxi cab drivers to pay Alaska paid in Alaska's landing fees. They said Alaska was going to move to a different airport, and I'll call BS on that.
All right, additional questions? Sean?
So as somebody who doesn't have ties to the port, what's the most important thing you need to learn to be an effective port commissioner?
Well, I have no ties to the port, but I've actually been paying attention to what goes on there quite a bit. And one of the things that we'll have to do is quickly get the other port commissioners on my side and use public forums to do that, to put the pressure on them. Change is always difficult, and changing the landscape to a more, I guess, positive and open forums will be needed. So we'll have to be putting pressure, just like City Hall. You know, I gotta say, you know, City Hall has had that pressure, and now we're seeing some great policy come out of them. And that's what we got to do with the port, because right now nobody's paying attention, but yet they have the ability to tax our houses. And we need to make sure those tax dollars are being used to actually create that positive economic growth for all of us, not just for a certain few, because the port has become a playground for the rich.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more question. Anybody? Going?
I'll ask.
Go for it.
So how do you expect to work with City Hall? That's been something that has just been an insurmountable challenge to everyone I've ever interviewed for this job.
For working with City Hall, I don't know. So far, I've never had problems with City Hall. Actually, for any issues I've had, they've actually all just agreed to a lot of the stuff I've ever asked for them for my union, which is really nice. But when I come thinking of that, we just got to remember, you know, who we serve, and you know, I have no problems letting my ego go. You know, and that's something that I think a lot of people need to realize is if you're going to be in the public service, you have to be able just to be like, you know what, I was wrong, and just go ahead and create those compromises, and not just be so, I don't know, pig-headed. And that's the truth. There's a lot of big egos, and I think that's probably why I've done so well being so young in a lot of these older, you know, groups like, you know, King County Labor Council. I mean, these guys have been there forever, and when I speak out, especially against things that have gone on the same for 20 years, they listen only because they know that I'm just tossing that idea, and I create those, I create the groups, you know, beforehand, before we make those.
All right, we're about out of time. If you want to take 30 seconds for a closing statement.
So, you guys are actually my first non-labor endorsement meeting here, so I'm sorry if I'm a little nervous, as I'm not used to. I'm used to being on your side of the table asking the very complex questions that tend to stump people. I really hope to get you guys' endorsement. I would really appreciate it, especially since I think, you know, coming from Seattle, we have a lot that we need to make sure the port's doing for us. And I really want to make a positive change for everybody when it comes to the port. And I know I may have the lesser name than the former city council member, but I do want to say that I'm in this not for gains of any sort. I'm actually just doing this for public service. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much.